Hey there, today I thought I would show you some behind the scenes look over my shoulder while I work on a photo to bring out the image that I envision. Alright, so this is a photo. It's pretty much near where I think I want to keep it. And I wanted to show you today how I got to this photo from the original photo, which is this. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just walk through how I would approach this photo and how I would work on it to bring out the image, the color, contrast, and everything to get the final image, which looks like this. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is actually a virtual copy. It's the same image. And one of the first things I did was I selected an image that had a decent amount of range and tonal value. I could have selected one that was a little too bright, or maybe I might have selected one that was too dark. And you want to get this right in camera. But one thing you can check is before you get started, I'm in Lightroom, by the way. If you hit J, you can see the places that have no detail, because by hitting J, it will show you places that are overexposed and underexposed. If I went to this one over here, for instance, you can see that some areas are underexposed, and I would rather be on the right side of the histogram. So I actually picked a picture that has a little bit of overexposure, which means I will not be able to recover anything there. That's just pure white, but that's okay with me. So let's go ahead and get started with this. One of the first things I'm going to do is I have found that if I do this last, I end up making a lot of adjustments. I'm going to go to the dehaze tool, which is under Effects in Lightroom, and I'm going to give it just a little bit of dehaze. And that's particularly important in certain images that have haze in them. It cuts through it and it does a pretty good job. However, if you wait until the end to do the dehaze, sometimes it can oversaturate it, and so I will put it at a reasonable level, usually under 20, depending on the image. And you can turn on and off each of these effect things like this to see the difference. Oh, that's not it. It's this one. There. So that's not dehazed, and that's taking a little bit of the haze away. In this case, I might actually take a little bit more off. I'm going to push it a little hard and see if that's too much. You know what? I'm gonna try it at that. All right. So let's go ahead and go to where I would begin with this. First of all, I can see that the upper part here is a little blown out. So I'm going to do two things, because I can see there's already a little bit of orange warmth color in here. And I know that I've got all this blue here and this green. So that's going to be a nice contrast of having the orange or yellow, some blue and some green, a little bit of yellow up there. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out my tool over here, which is the adjustment brush, and I'm going to increase the size of the adjustment brush so it's larger. And notice the feathering around it's rather large. You can increase or decrease the feathering size, but I want a relatively decent feather on there. This would be a very hard brush, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a feather, maybe around there. And then one of the first things I'm going to do is make sure all of my sliders are set to 0, and you can do that by hitting reset over here. You hold down the option key and it sets everything to 0. And the other thing I'm going to do is hit the O key on the keyboard, because what it'll do is now as I start to brush in, I will be able to see where I'm affecting. And it's not painting red. What it's doing is it's just telling me where, once I start making the changes, it's going to occur. And so once I can see pretty much where I am affecting, I'm going to hit the O key again and make it disappear. So there has been no change here. Now, any of these here that I change, of course, will make the change of where I just sort of sprayed on or brushed on. So I can make the clouds darker here if I like. But one of the first things I'm going to do actually is I'm going to change the temperature, because there is already warmth in there, but I'm going to warm it up even more to a point where I kind of like it. And for right now, without going overboard, I think that will do. So I've just warmed it up. Let's take a look at the difference again. Well, actually, let me do one more thing. I'm going to select a new brush. And so this is going to be just a brand new brush. And you can see that it's not affecting this one because there's no circle in there. If I click on there, then now if I brush now, it's going to affect that. But let me go ahead and get a new brush, brand new brush, and this time I'm going to, let me hit O once again, and what I want to do is darken all of this in general, separate from the gold because I didn't want to affect that blue patch in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to do something with that a little bit later. But I did want to be able to darken the entire thing. And so I'm going to hit O again, get rid of that. And this time I'm going to darken the entire thing. Now, if you go overboard, you're going to be able to see the halos and all that. So the trick here is to just be subtle. If you double click on the name here, it'll bring it back to 0. And what I like to do is just click on here and then hit the down arrow key on my keyboard and just watch it slowly give a little bit of darkness. And that might have been a little bit too much. I can see over here that I might have missed this corner, so I'm going to get that. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, the last piece I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down the corner over here. So I'm going to hit one more new brush. And I'm going to, so it's a brand new brush here. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hit this corner right there. Let me hit O so we can see what we're doing. All right, that's pretty good. More or less like that. Turn it off. And now I'm going to bring this blue down to bring in a little bit of the blue color of that edge. Just a little bit. That might be too much. Okay. All right, so there we are on the first part of it. Let's see what else can I do. This part of the rock face has some real character to it, but it seems to be a little dark. But I don't want to. I'm going to increase the exposure overall. Over here. Increase the exposure. Oh, hold on. Oh, wait, I'm doing the wrong thing. Let's get that back to 0. And let's go to basic. This is where I want to increase the exposure overall. So I'm going to go over here and increase the exposure. And maybe there, just for now, looks pretty good. All right, so now that I've gotten this as light as I really want to get it, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the exposure in that rock face. And once again, we're going to go to our brush tool. This time I'm going to go to a smaller brush tool, and I'm going to go to a slightly harder thing here. And then I'm going to brush in. I'm going to hit O again so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to brush in the area, too big, brush in the area that I want to affect. And you want to be somewhat careful here. You don't want to affect areas that you don't want to. But that's pretty much where I'm going to. Then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to try to affect this area as well, get smaller when necessary, and get really tiny and go over here. And then I'm going to go even larger and just brush all this in. This is all detail that I want to stand out. One of the things that I like to do in my images is give lots of contrast. Let me make that a little bit softer. Give lots of contrast between sections. So it's not all one lightness, one exposure level. And so what I like to do is just give it like a stripe. And what I'm saying here, you'll see, is you've got a dark area here, you've got these light stripes, and then I'd like to lighten this up and do something with that area. So let's see what we can do here. I'm going to turn off O, so now nothing has been changed. And one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to click on exposure, hit the up arrow key, and bring up the exposure just a tad. Okay, not so bright that it's crazy, right? But just a tad to bring it up. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, I know that's brown rock over there. I'm going to bring up the warmth of it just a little bit like that. Maybe right there. All right. All right, so let's take a look at what this looks like before and after. This is after, and this is before. You'll notice all the changes that are happening in the clouds and also in the areas that I've selected in the rocks. The other thing I'm going to do in this area, so I'm going to get a new brush, and I'm going to just make it a little bit larger here. Maybe that. And let me get my, so I can see what's going on. And by the way, you don't have to use the O key in order to see what's going on. You can just brush it on and see if you like it, which is just fine. This is just a habit that I've started. The other thing I'm going to do, turn off the O key, is in this area separate from the warmth, I'm going to bring in a little bit of clarity just because I like the character there. So I'm going to go overboard so you can see it. Okay, so that's, well, that's not too bad actually, but this is the clarity slider. I can reduce the clarity if I like, but I'm going to bring up the clarity just a bit, and I'm going to go back to this other one because I think I'm going to warm that up just a little bit more. Okay. All right, actually I'm probably going to warm that up in a slightly different way in just a little bit. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, so far so good, pretty good. I think I like it. This side is getting a little light, so I'm going to reduce my size so I can do something that I'm going to show you. I'm going to use this, it's a horizon kind of tool. Let's see what they call it here. graduated filter. This is really cool. So I'm going to put a filter on like right about there on the blue, and I'm going to bring it down, just the exposure down just a little bit to where it's not singing really bright. Let's see if I like that. Okay, pretty good. Change that. All right, let's go back to fit so I can see everything. And let's see what else would I do on this picture. One of the things I think I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the warmth once again of this sand over here. So I'm going to go over to my HSL. I'm going to go to saturation. I'm going to click on this little thing here and find a color that I think is around. So this brown is pretty much all over here. And what I'm going to do is click and hold and push it up. If I push it up too high, you'll see it gets to be radioactive. If you look at the sliders off to the right, you'll see what is being affected. So as I push it up, I'm probably just going to push it up a little bit, not too much, maybe there. But that gives it a nice warm tone, and it's only messing around with that. This green over here is interesting, and for this I'm going to actually go to the hue because I want to show you something. This is really cool. I'm going to click on, actually I've already got this clicked on, and if I change the hue of this green going in one direction, it looks more yellow and dead and like, you know, they're going through a drought, right? But if I go in the other direction, watch what happens. Now, this is about normal here. If I go in the other direction too much, it becomes like bad green, right? But somewhere before you get to that really bad, fake-looking, painted-on green, somewhere before there, you can change the hue just a little bit to make it look just a little greener, just a little richer, without changing the saturation per se. You're changing the hue. Okay, and let's see what happens if I remove this and turn it on and off. So there is without both the sand and the greenery, and there is with very, very subtle things. All right, let's see what else I can do here. I like this area over here, and one of the things I think I'm going to do is use the brush tool once again. You'll notice how many times I use the brush tool. This time I'm going to get it nice and large with a soft. And I'm going to brush in just maybe starting here. I'm going to brush in just a little bit, some texture, some clarity. There's nice waves there, and I like how it looks. But I'm going to bring it out a little bit more. Let's turn off the O so it's normal. And right here is a clarity. And what I'm going to do is just bring that up a little bit. And you'll notice how in the areas that I've brushed, you get a little bit more clarity. You can even add a little bit of contrast. Again, you don't want to go overboard. And let's see how that looks and doesn't look. So there's everything off. All the brushes are off. All the brushes are on. All right. Let's see. I think another thing I like to do on images is to use the radial tool right here. And I'm going to put a vignette. I think that the main topic is around here. So I'm going to put a circle or an oval around there. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then what I'm going to do is bring the exposure down, and you'll notice, and I typically like to do it again using the number thing over there and using the down arrow key. You can go too far too fast, and so by clicking here you get to 0. So I'm going to click on here and just bring it down a little bit. And again, this is to taste. Everything's to taste. But I like how it draws your eye in. It even darkens this area over here. Everything over here stays a little bright. So I like how that has looked. Let me see if there's anything else I would do. You know, this area up here is just a little bit light. So I think I'm going to bring it down just a little bit right there. And let's see if I can bring it down just a tad. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I think that's close to being done. All right, so the last things, well, not necessarily, but sometimes what I'll like to do is I like to crush my blacks. So I'm going to hit J and find out what areas are too bright and too dark. One of the first things I'm going to do, I can see it's starting to get very dark. I'm going to boost the exposure a little bit here. I'm going to increase contrast, and what that's going to do is just bring everything out a little bit. Not too much, not too much. But here's the part where you can really make your picture sing, in my opinion. Right now I can see that little red spot there means that that's overexposed and blown out. But there's no place that's showing blue, which means it's too dark or black. I'm going to slide this until I start to see the blue. And you know what? There's the blue coming up over there, which means it's black. It's pure black. But once parts of your image start to get black, the other parts really end up being like contrasty and rich, which is really cool. And having something that's pure black isn't bad. When I turn it off, you'll see in a second. But if I bring my whites up, a lot of stuff is going to start to get blown out. Okay, so I actually like to have a little black and no overblown highlights or white. So I'm going to bring that down all the way to there where I don't see any. And that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to turn off the J key, which now, so all this place that was blue, it really is black, but I think that makes a nice look to me. I think the contrast might be a little high, so I'm going to pull it down a little bit on this particular image. And this, by the way, is where if I had waited until the last minute to do my effects, my dehaze, it can go overboard, because then you've made all those other adjustments, and then you got to pull them back a little bit and things like that. I think it's looking pretty good. I think one of the last things I might do is go back to my details, and I like to apply a reasonable amount of sharpening. In order to see what's going on, I'll zoom in really close and look for areas that I want to have sharpened. And I found that, this is really to taste, but I found that sometimes a high level of sharpening isn't bad if you mask it by using this. And by holding the Option key down, everything goes white, which means everything's being masked. If I pull it back, I can now see that certain areas are being sharpened, and other areas like the clouds way up here in the corner are not being sharpened. Okay, but the cliffs are, and some of the vegetation is, which is good, and so I'm going to leave it like that. So not everything is being sharpened right now. Only those areas that were determined to have hard edges are being sharpened even more. One thing I see I didn't do is I'm going to straighten this. It's relatively straight, although it's a little bit tilted, so I'm going to click on here, click on there, make a nice straight line, and see if it straightens it a little bit. You always want straighten it just a tad. And I think while I'm here, I'm going to go to my current favorite, which is a 16 by 9. And that works out really nice on this particular picture. Here's why. There wasn't a whole lot going on down here at the bottom, but the clouds are rich, and so this composition is really nice. I might bring it in just a tad, and that way leave the rocks over here. That's a nice composition. The horizon's flat. This goes to a nice area over there. I think I like that. So I'm going to have that as an image. One thing you might want to do, let's see, I might want to use the brush tool once again. And I am just going to, this time I'm going to turn on what I'm going to overblow it, but I'm going to put some highlights right here, maybe right there, make it smaller and give me some highlights right here. Oops, way too small. Undo. How'd I get that small? Okay, let's see. I can't even see my brush anymore. There you go. Okay, maybe like that. Maybe just a little bit there. Let's see, I forget where I've hit. Maybe like that. Oh, the surf right here. Give it a little bit of interest and contrast. Okay, now I'm gonna hit to 0. That's 0, and then I'm gonna go back here, and I'm just gonna give it just a little kiss of light. Not too much. Let's see the difference between on and off again. Only paying attention to those areas. So not bad. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to my image now that I've touched it, and I'm going to hit the backspace key, and let's take a look at actually, let's see, this is the before, and now this is the after. The other one I didn't crop yet, though. So this is what it looks like. Pretty good. I like the haze over here. You know what? I might bring down, these islands are kind of cool. I don't know. This is an experiment, so bear with me here. I'm going to put a little bit of brush tone on here. Go in there before I have to go small. I could have gone larger and made it a little bit easier on myself. You know what? Let's do that. Because that's crazy. Let's see. So let's see, now that I can see, I'm going to try to tone that up. And by the way, I'm doing this really fast for demonstration reasons. I think if I was doing this for production reasons, or if a client was wanting, I'd be taking my time a little bit more on these edges here. Okay, now that we can see that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to turn off the that. And I think what I want to do here is I'm going to dehaze that, just that island. So let's dehaze that island a little bit. Ooh, look at that. Maybe not too much. And you know what? I think maybe a little bit of clarity, a little bit of, okay. And let's see how that looks once I close that up. Okay, not bad. Pretty good. Brought that island up a little bit there. And again, this was the, that's the before, and that's the after there. All right, so there you go. I think I might do a few other things on here. Some of this green looks a little too vibrant, so what I might do is bring down the saturation just a little bit, because it's looking too saturated. So I believe that's where I started there. So I'm going to bring it down just a bit so it doesn't look too, too crazy. So the saturation is being brought down, but the hue hasn't changed. And I think that's it. You know what? This orange thing has got me bugged a little bit. I think I'm going to bring down the saturation of that guy just a little bit too. So right about there if I can. Whoops. I can tell exposure's on. Exposure's on too bright. And let's see if I can bring down the saturation of this guy just a tad. Just a little bit. Okay. I don't want to bring it down all the way or kill it, but all right. And I think I like that. I think I'm going to bring the, is this the one? Yeah, that's the one I want. Exposure on that up just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, well, that was one image, and hopefully that was helpful for you to look over my shoulder. By the way, so much of this is the taste. You might be looking at this going, oh gosh, that's not how I would have done it. And that's great. Everybody can choose a different palette, different paintbrushes, different styles and things like that. But hopefully I was able to show you some ideas of how to use Lightroom to touch up your images and bring out the image that you envision.